First graders, the next chapter of Tall is called Troom. Chapter 14. Where we last left off, Tall, Noom, and Millie Tinkle were just leaving Beago's house, and they were on the path to Troom with their silver sandals and silver shoes. All that day and all that night, they followed the silver road across the plain. They saw nothing, no men, no animals, no living thing of any kind. Not once did they stop, not even to sleep or eat. But Tall did not grow tired, for his silver sandals carried him along with no effort whatsoever. On the morning of the second day, they came to an amber cliff so high that when Tall stood at the bottom and looked up, the top was out of sight. Imagine that you're at the bottom of a cliff, you look up, and you can't even see the top. At the foot of the cliff, the road ended, and where the road ended, there was a door. Noom stopped and said, "No one can get to the top of this cliff without first becoming part animal." Oh, I love this part of the story. "What do you mean?" asked Tall. "I'll show you," said Noom. He opened the door, and the three of them went into a square room. The walls of the room were covered with shelves, and on the shelves were rows and rows of miniature animals carved out of amber. There was an amber elephant. Sorry, my nose is really itchy. There was an amber elephant, an amber tiger, an amber eagle, an amber kangaroo, an amber giraffe, and as many other kinds of animals as you can think of. In front of each animal was a little amber cup filled with a clear liquid that looked very much like water. Noom picked up one of the cups and said, "This cup was in front of the elephant. If I take a sip of the liquid, then I'll become part elephant." "What part?" asked Tall. "My nose will grow into a trunk," said Noom. "But that won't help you get up the cliff," said Tall. "I don't see what's the use of drinking it." "You're right," said Noom. "There is none. But if I drank from the cup in front of the eagle, then I would have wings and I could fly to the top of the cliff." "I see what you mean," said Tall. "I could drink from the cup in front of the crow and I'd grow black wings and could fly. But if I drank from the cup in front of the dog, I'd only learn to bark. Is that right?" "Yes," said Noom. "But there's no way of telling what part of you will change. And as you can only drink from one cup, it is important that you choose an animal that will be most likely to help you get up the cliff. Otherwise, you'll have to stay at the bottom." "I'm going to drink from the same one that you do," said Tall. "Then I'll know what's going to happen to me." "You can't do that," said Noom. "We each have to take a different cup, and you must swallow only one sip. If you take more than that, there's no telling what will happen to you." "What does Millie Tinkle do?" asked Tall. "She has to drink too," said Noom. "She can't get up without changing." After that, they went around the room and looked at all the little animals one by one. Then Millie Tinkle said, "If I had hind legs like those of a kangaroo, in one hop I could reach the top of the cliff." With these words, she picked up the cup in front of the kangaroo and took a sip of liquid. By the time she'd put the cup back in place and walked through the door, her legs began to grow. In a few minutes, she had such tremendous kangaroo legs that she could hop hundreds of yards at a time. She turned to Noom and said, "I'm going now. I'll see you at the top of the cliff." And off she went down the silver road. Hop, hop, hop! Soon she was a mere speck miles away from the plain. Before she had disappeared altogether, she turned around and started back at full speed, until it seemed, she turned back at full speed. Faster and faster she came, and closer, until it seemed that in one more hop she would dash herself headlong against the cliff. But she never took that last hop. Instead, she gave a terrific jump and shot up into the air. Up and up she went, straight over Tall's head and out of sight. And as she did not come down again, Noom knew that she must have reached the top. "Will I be able to do that too?" asked Tall. "It must be fun to hop along like that." "You'll have to choose something else," said the old man. "No one else can drink out of the kangaroo's cup today." "Tell me what cup to drink out of," said Tall. "I'll drink out of any one you say." "I can't do that," said the old man. "You'll have to choose for yourself. Anyhow, I'm going next so that you'll be able to watch me and know what to do." "I don't want to be left alone," said Tall. "Let me go along with you." "That's not possible," said Noom. "I've got to be at the top to look out for you for when you come. There's nothing to be afraid of. Choose your animal and drink out of the cup in front of it. Then do what you feel like doing." "I might choose the wrong one. Then I'd be left here," said Tall, "and I'd never see you again." Don't worry about that, said the old man. If you want to be safe, drink from the cup in front of any one of the birds. That's what I'm going to do. And don't forget, only take one sip. Then Noom drank from the cup in front of the eagle. After that, he went out of the room and stood near the foot of the cliff. While he stood there, his arms slowly grew feathery and turned into wings. He flapped them and said, I'm going now. When you've had your drink, come out of the room and shut the door. With these words, he spread his wings and flew off to the top of the cliff. Tall watched him disappear from sight. Then he went inside the room. He thought, which cup had I better try? I've seen what the kangaroo does, and I've seen Noom grow wings like an eagle. It would be fun if I tried something else. What kind of animal would you try? What do you think would help you get to the top of the cliff? Let's see what Tall tries. He forgot all about what the old man had told him, that he would be safe if he took a cup from in front of a bird. Instead, he went from animal to animal, wondering which one to try. When he came to the giraffe, he stopped and said, if I drank from your cup, I would grow long legs and I could step to the top of the cliff. That would be more fun than anything else. He reached up and took the cup in his hand. He put it to his lips and sipped the liquid. It tasted so good that without another thought, he drank the whole cup dry. Then he hurried from the room and slammed the door behind him. All of a sudden, his legs and his neck began to grow, but his body stayed the same. Imagine that. Long legs and long neck, but your body staying the same size. Soon he was so unsteady on his feet that he had to lean back against the cliff to balance himself. Still, his neck and legs kept growing. His head got farther and farther away from his body, and his body got farther and farther away from the ground. He looked down, and he could see his sandals shining like two silver specks far below. Am I never gonna stop? He thought. No giraffe ever had a neck or legs like this. Perhaps I should not have drunk so much. Meanwhile, he went right on growing until his head was at the top of the cliff, his body halfway up, and his feet still on the ground. Then he turned around and saw Millie Tinkle and Noom. He said, I drank from the cup in front of the giraffe. Look at what's happened to me. What should I do? How much did you drink? Asked Noom. All of it, said Tall. I told you to only take a sip, said the old man. I can't do anything for you now. When your body comes by, if I can pull you back and make you sit down here, then you will become your own size again. I don't want to grow any more, shouted Tall. For all the time, his neck was getting longer and his head farther away from the top of the cliff. Please stop me. I'll never disobey you again. I promise you I won't. Please, please, please. I've got to wait until your body comes by, shouted Noom. When your legs are so long that your body's up here, then I'll try to make you sit down. If once you sit on the edge of the cliff, you will shrink down to your own size again. What did you say? Shouted Tall. I didn't hear you. I said, started Noom. Then he stopped, for he saw that Tall's head was too high up in the sky for the boy to hear anything. So he and Millie Tinkle sat down and waited. They waited for a long time, and finally a pair of shoulders appeared, and then a back, and then a pair of hips. Come on, said Noom to the donkey. Take hold of his sarong and pull with all your might. Remember, his sarong is what he's wearing, like below his waist. It looks kind of like a long skirt. It's like one long fabric. Let's see. Millie Tinkle took hold of Tall's sarong with her teeth, and the old man pulled on it with his hands. In this way, with a great deal of effort, they managed to make Tall sit back on the edge of the cliff. Then his legs began to shrink up, and his head shrunk down until he became his own size once more. He turned to the old man and said, Is this the top of the cliff? Did my legs grow that long? They did, said Noom. No one ever came up the cliff that way before. It's lucky you didn't go on growing forever. I'm glad I didn't, said Tall. I don't ever want to grow that tall again. You shouldn't have drunk so much, said the old man. I told you to take only one sip. I know, said Tall. I'm sorry I did what you told me not to do. But it was so good I couldn't stop drinking. I didn't know what it was going to do to me. You know now, said Noom. The next time, perhaps you'll do what I tell you. I will, said Tall. I promise you I will. Won't you tell me what made me stop growing? Noom then answered. The minute you sat down on the top of the cliff, it broke the spell. What spell? Asked Tall. The spell that the liquid cast over you when you drank it, said Noom. The same thing happened to Millie Tinkle and me. Otherwise, we'd still be part animal. It would be unfortunate to have to stay part animal all your life. But that's what happens to those who drink the liquid and are not able to get up to the amber cliff. I'm glad I got up, said Tall. But why did we have to come? Where are we now? We are on the plateau that Troom is on. All we have to do is follow the silver road, and we'll go straight to Troom. But where's the road at? Asked Tall. I haven't seen it. It's right behind you, said the old man. Tall turned around, and there was the silver road, not far from where he sat. Oh, I thought it stopped at the bottom of the cliff. It did, said Noom, but it begins again up here. If we start walking right now, we'll be in Troom by this evening. Aren't you going to read me any more stories? Asked Tall. I'm afraid there's not time, said the old man with a sigh. I may have a chance later to read one more, but that will be all. You be thinking them over so you can tell me which you like best. Hey, first graders, you think over too. Think of which one you like best so far. I'll ask you when we get near Troom. Now we must be hurrying along. The three of them got up and started off on the silver road. All the rest of that day they followed it across the plateau. Late in the afternoon, Tall saw in the distance a flat-topped hill that was all white and rose high above the surrounding land. He looked at it and said, What's that white hill in the distance? Looks as if it's covered in snow. That's the hill that Troom is on, said the old man. It's not covered in snow. It's all made of ivory. The city of Troom is built on top of it. Ivory is something like the piano keys, the white piano keys, could be made out of ivory, or elephant tusks are part ivory, So it's kind of like a special white stone, I guess you could say. It's not really a stone. I don't really know how to describe ivory. I'm going to have to do some research. Let's see. Why don't we see any houses? Asked Tall. Because there's a high ivory wall around the city, said Noom. The wall is higher than the tops of houses. That's why you can't see them. What do the houses look like? Asked Tall. They're shaped like eggs standing on end, said Noom, and they're all painted bright colors. Like Easter eggs? Asked Tall. Exactly, said the old man. It must be fun to live in houses like that, said Tall. You must make King Tazarin let me into the city so that I can see the houses. He will, won't he? Noom said nothing. He walked on, as if he had not heard the boy's words. The road led them straight towards the hill until they were quite near. Then it turned, circled completely around the hill 7 times, and ended up at the foot of a flight of silver stairs. There Noom stopped and sat down on the bottom step. He said, This is as far as you can come with me. No children are allowed to go beyond here. Sit down while I read you one more story. I think there's time for it before the sun goes down. Then you can wait here till I come back. If I don't come back, Beagle the blacksmith knows where you are. He'll take you to his house. Please don't leave me, said Tall. I want to go into the city. You can't, said Noom. If you come in with me, King Tazarin will seize you and put you to death. That means he would find him. Because, remember, there's no kids allowed in Troom. I don't care, said Tall. I'm not going to let you go without me. Noom shook his head and said, You mustn't act that way. There's nothing I'd rather do than take you, but it can't be done. You sit down and listen to the story. Then tell me which one you like best of all those you've heard. I don't want to, said Tall. I want to go to Troom. You've got to tell me, said Noom. The only reason I brought you along was because I thought you could choose a story that would open the door. I know it, said Tall. I'm sorry I spoke like that. You read the story, and I'll listen. Then Noom began to read a story called The Great Giant Bunga. But before he got halfway through it, the sun set, and there was not enough light to read by. He said, I can't see to read any more. I'll have to leave that story unfinished. Oh, read just a little more, said Tall. It's the best story you've read yet. It's too dark to see, said the old man, but I'll tell you how the rest of the story goes. And he went on and told Tall as much of the story as he could remember. Then he said, if you wish, I can tell you how some of the other stories go that I haven't read. Perhaps you'd like them better. You don't have to, said Tall. I know that the story about the giant bunga will open the door. Any child would like that story. Are you sure? Said Noom Zarnoom. I know it will, said Tall. It's the best. Then Noom Zarnoom was pleased. He believed that the story Tall chose would really open the door. He said, if you like the story as much of that, I shall read it to the king. I didn't think any of my stories would please you so much. That one does, said Tall. It's the best story I've ever heard. But I may be wrong. You can't be, said Noom Zarnoom. I have a feeling that your choice is right. All along I've known that you would save me from prison. I haven't saved you yet, said Tall, for he was afraid that Noom Zarnoom was too hopeful. I don't want you to be disappointed. Then Millie Tinkle flapped her ears. The little golden bells tinkled, and she said, Tall has chosen the right story. It will open the door. When Noom Zarnoom heard these words that his donkey spoke, he had no more doubts. He said, Millie Tinkle always speaks the truth, so she must be right this time. Of course I'm right, said Millie Tinkle, but you should do something for Tall, because he's chosen the right story. What can I do more than I've done? Asked the old man. You can take him to Troom, said Millie Tinkle. How can I? Said Noom Zarnoom. You know King Tazarin's orders. But Millie Tinkle had a plan. Let Tall crawl inside the crystal block, and I'll carry him on my back, said the donkey. No one will know he's there. Yes! Shouted Tall with delight. I can get inside the crystal block. Noom Zarnoom thought for a moment. Then he said, But what will happen if by chance I don't open the door? There's no chance of that, said the donkey. Animals sometimes know more than men, and I know that you're going to open it. If you're certain, said the old man, then Tall can come. But no one can know that he's inside the block. No one will, said Tall. I'll keep perfectly quiet. So the old man opened the end of the crystal block, and Tall crawled in. There was just enough room for him to lie down if he curled up with his knees close to his chin. Of course, he was cramped and uncomfortable, but he didn't mind. After Tall had crawled in, Noom Zarnoom slid back the end of the block, leaving a small crack for air to pass through. When this was done, he lifted the block up to the donkey's back and covered it over with the golden cloth. Then he told Millie Tinkle to go ahead, and together they walked up the long flight of silver stairs. At the top, they came to an ivory gate. On either side of this gate stood 2 guards. Each of them wore a golden helmet and a golden coat of mail, and each carried a golden lance with a diamond head. All of these are like different tools or armor that they're wearing. When Noom Zarnoom came to the gate, the guard stopped him and said, You are just in time, Noom Zarnoom. The stories are to be told tonight. King Tazarin has ordered us to tell you to go straight to the palace. He's been expecting you back for many days. By now he thinks you're not coming. Noom Zarnoom said, I've been on a long journey and have gathered my stories. Only with great difficulty did I get back to Troom. Then one of the guards said, What's that on your donkey's back? Tell us before we let you pass. The king wishes us to examine everything that's brought into the city. We must do as we're told. That, said Noom Zarnoom, is a block of black crystal. I've written my stories on it so that I might not forget them. What do you mean? Said the guards. We don't understand. I'll show you, said Noom Zarnoom. He lifted the cover off one corner of the block and showed the guards how the black surface was covered with golden letters. Then they believed what he said. They asked him no more questions, but made up their minds to let him pass. After telling him to go straight to the palace, they rapped on the gate with their lances, and it opened. And Noom Zarnoom and Millie Tinkle, along with Tall, went in to Troom. By that time, night had fallen. It was pitch black. But the streets of Troom were paved with colored cobblestones that shone in the dark. Some were red, some were blue, some were yellow, some were green, and some were orange. No matter what color they were, they all shone brilliantly and gave off enough light to illuminate the streets. On either side of the streets were rows of egg-shaped houses. They too shone, each with its own light, so that all of Troom seemed to blaze with the many colors of the rainbow. Oh, that sounds pretty wonderful. It was a wonderful sight, but Tall could not enjoy it because from the inside of the crystal block, he could see nothing. Noom Zarnoom and Millie Tinkle followed one narrow street after the other. They stopped for nothing, but turning this way and that, they made their way through the city to the palace. The palace was a huge, egg-shaped building, many times as big as the other houses. It was gold in color, and it shone like the sun. The windows were made of rubies and gave off a blood-red light. In front of the palace was a square, all paved with golden cobblestones. Round the square stood crowds of people, waiting anxiously to hear what success attended the storytellers. Just as Nooms arrived in front of the palace, a man came forth holding a torch in one hand and a scroll in the other. He walked to the middle of the square, and there he stopped. Then the noise of the crowd dwindled to a deadly silence while the man unrolled the scroll and said, "O people of Troom! 9 years ago tonight, my son was carried away from the throne room of the palace. At the time that he was stolen, the golden door prophesied," that means like predicted, "and said that when a story was told that would please the door, then would the door open, and my son, your prince, would be returned. Every year for 8 years, 5 stories have been told before the golden door, but so far none has pleased it. Tonight, for the 9th time, the stories are to be told. If the door be opened, and if my son be returned, then will happiness and joy be spread throughout Troom. If the door be not opened, then we must continue in sorrow, and until the time that the door is opened, no children shall be allowed to leave or enter Troom. This is my order, and by my power as King of Troom it shall be obeyed. Signed, King Tazarin of Troom." After reading this proclamation, the man with the torch returned to the palace. Once more the people began to talk and chatter, and their voices made a great din. Then Nooms and Millie Tinkle pushed their way through the crowd, crossed the square, and went to the palace door, where they were met by a guard who said, "It's good that you have come, Nooms. You're just in time. Leave your donkey here and follow me." "I must make my donkey with me," said Nooms. "My stories are written on the crystal block she carries on her back." "No donkeys are allowed in the palace," said the guard. "I can't come without her," said the old man. "If you won't let her in, I can't read my story." "I don't know what to do," said the guard. "No one has ever asked to bring in a donkey before." "You let me in with her," said Nooms. "If King Tazarin is displeased, I shall take the consequences." So the donkey was allowed to pass. She and Nooms followed the guard up a flight of golden steps and down a long corridor with diamond walls. At the end, they turned into a small room that opened off the throne room. The other 4 storytellers were already in this little room. Nooms was the last to come. When he entered with his donkey, the other men greeted him and said, "We are glad to see you. We thought you were not coming. But why have you got the donkey with you, and what is that on its back?" "It's a crystal block," said Nooms. "All the stories I have gathered are written on it." They said, "You have to tell the story. You cannot read it." "What difference does it make?" asked Nooms. They said, "It depends on what King Tazarin says. We know that he will only laugh at you if you go before him with a donkey and a crystal block. He will think you are making a fool of him." "Why should he?" said Nooms. "He doesn't care as long as I open the door. What else can I do? Tell me and I'll do it. The block is too heavy to carry. Without the donkey I could not have got here at all." They laughed at the old man and teased him and said, "King Tazarin will think you as silly as your donkey. He will not even listen to your story. He will have you thrown out of the palace. Take our advice, learn your story by heart. There is still time." "I will do as I have planned," said Nooms. "If I am thrown out, it will be my own fault, no one else's." And all the time he thought to himself, "They are afraid that my story is better than theirs. They may as well be, for the story of the giant is going to open the door. Millie Tinkle said so." While the storytellers were thus talking together in the small room, a trumpet sounded in the throne room, and King Tazarin came in. He was a stout man, so that means kind of like short and a little bit bigger, all dressed in gold and silver robes, and on his head he wore a crown of jewels. His shoes were made of coral, and in the toe of each shoe was set a sparkling pink diamond. Walking beside him was the queen. She was thin and pale, and all the splendor of her attire only made her face seem more sorrowful and sad. I bet you guys know why she's sad. In the many years since her son was stolen away, she had not been seen to smile even once. After them came the courtiers and the guards. The king mounted the throne and sat down. and at his feet sat the queen. The courtiers took their places on either side of the throne, and behind him stood the guards, 40 on each side of the king. They were dressed the same as the guards at the ivory gate, and each held a lance in one hand and a tall candle in the other. These candles they arranged around the throne, so that the light from them danced and sparkled in the jewels of the king's crown. And here's a picture of the king and queen and some of the courtiers and knights. After everyone had taken his place, the king said in his gruff, harsh voice, "Bring me the golden bowl." With these words that he spoke, one of the guards brought him a golden bowl and held it before him. Then the king dropped 5 coins into the bowl and said, "Carry the bowl into the storytellers and let them each draw a coin. He who draws the coin with the lowest number on it will tell his story first. He who draws the highest will come last. The others will come before me according to their numbers." After the king had finished speaking, the guard made a low bow and went from the throne room into the room where the storytellers were. There he passed the bowl around, and each man drew a coin. When they came to compare their numbers, it was found that Noom's was the highest. So remember, that means he'll go last. The other storytellers laughed and said, "You will have to wait until last. It serves you right for bringing the donkey. If one of us opens the door, you will not have a chance to go before the king, and your efforts will have been in vain. If we fail, you will see us thrown into prison, and you will know what is coming for you next." Noom said, "I am happy with my number, if I shall be able to hear your stories before I tell mine. And then if one of you opens the door, I shall be pleased. If you don't, I shall still have a chance to open it and free you all from prison." Because remember, if anyone is successful, then all the storytellers get freed. It is good that I should go last. While they were still talking, a trumpet sounded in the next room, and all became silent. Not a sound was to be heard. Then the trumpet sounded again, and the first storyteller knew that his time had come to go before the king. He bade his companions goodbye and walked through the door into the throne room, where the king, the queen, and the courtiers awaited him. And the next chapter is chapter 15, Reper-Tep-Tep, and the story of Bantaguma. We're going to get to hear some of the other storytellers' stories. Oh, it's going to be so great. All right, check in next week for more chapters from Tal.